Hello everyone, welcome to a new video. This time we'll be looking at the refined Tyrannos update. I'm not too late on this one for a change, which is nice. And boy howdy oh boy, this is a really good batch of heroes. Sure wish they could have used even half of that energy last month with Leaf, but awakening benefits, I suppose. It's even worse when I'll show some comparison with Morgan. But as per usual, I'll go from worst to best. And do understand one thing when I say worst to best. All of these refines are amazing, okay? It's just that one of them has to be less good than the others. That's kind of just how it is. So, let's just jump into it. I have made two other placement change, but I'll explain these once we get to a certain other character that is the reason why these two characters went down. So, moving on. Let's talk first with Barst. And I can already tell people are going to be like, wait, Barst is the worst? It's not so much that he's the worst, more so the fact that he's not exactly versatile. And also having this bootleg but better Fury effect, which is literally just Fallen Delphia's weapon, by the way, except with Wrath. Just want to point that out. It's helpful, but the recoil kind of hurt. Any other thing you could want to do, you could want to become a bit more bulky overall, but overall, because of the recoil, you can't really do this. This is one of the problems Fallen Delphia already had. That said, when you're an infantry physical unit, this does not really matter, as Wrath for stuff in the weapon is already really good, but you can combo this into another Wrath, and because you already have Fury in the weapon, essentially, you can just run double Brazen and be completely fine. You have 4 skill that procs at under 75% HP as a result. 2 Wrath, 2 Brazens. It's kind of ridiculous. Still, the problem that you have with Bars is the fact that he's very linear. There's one thing he can do. He does it well, but he can do it several times in the same turn, which is kind of the problem with the character overall. Anyway, let's talk about build, shall we? This is the main one I just spoke about. And with Time Pulse and Double Wrath, you get 3 charge, which means you get Bonfire ready right away. Now, I can already tell someone telling me this, but Jay, when you want Iceberg, you end up with more res than death. That is correct, but at the same time, the chance of losing maybe 1 damage over losing, well, you know, way more because Brazen is not active. Yeah, it's kind of just overall better to just go with the more secure option that's consistent regardless of where you're at. So this set is very self-explanatory. It's basically you get at under 75% and you do big damage. Bonfire with Devil's Axe essentially is 22 damage. Double Wrath pushes that to 42 damage. This is similar to LA Hector in the way it was used to some extent for a while, until people just decided, not really worth it. Because the main reason that Hector had is, yes, I get charge, yes, I can get my special ready and screw people over, but I also need a babysitter to get my 2 movement, otherwise I'm kinda garbage. Oh, also, setting up Wrath with Hector is just not happening. Double Wrath, that is. Because you just get doubled and killed before you even get to Wrath. It's kind of gross, honestly. You can kind of use it with Brave Lucina, now that that's a thing. Just take a hit, proc Bonfire. But if you're not in Wrath range and then you get specced on the second hit, well, you're just still in a bad position because you won't kill. It's kind of not great overall, is the main issue. Burst, on the other hand, has a speed stat. And the speed stat, coupled with Devil Axe, which, by the way, that's 16 points of stats, which kind of just makes him on par in terms of stats with a Gen 4 BST unit, on top of giving him Wrath, which is just massive, and it literally does not even have a condition. Fury also, well, bootleg Fury but better, also hurts you, which means that setting up Raisins and Wrath is not a problem. You won't get to a point where you have too much bulk that you actually struggle setting up Wrath, which is something that LA Hector struggled with. This is why Barst is a tier above Hector, as you can see here. Actually, 2 tiers, my bad. Because Hector here is just kind of inconsistent, can't really make full use of the weapon, and just overall is not that great. I would say this though, if you gave his weapon to literally any other axe unit, mostly infantry ones, those units would be way better than he is, by a mile. But yeah, this is the main first set. Really good to just, at the start of the turn, you get the special ready, you one-shot something, that's that. If you get danced to attack something else, you don't have a special ready, and therefore you're not as dangerous, which means you're going to take a hit. Which is kind of a problem, because if you take too much damage, then the hit that you're going to take is going to kill you. And that's kind of the drawback with Burst. There is one way to kind of mitigate this for enemy phase, but even there, it's kind of iffy overall, because again, the recoil bites you in the ass. Second set is this one, which is with Special Spiral. Special Spiral basically just means you're going to proc it. Special Spiral will take your bonfire from 3 to 1. At the start of your turn, if you're under 75%, bonfire will get ready, which means you get a 32 damage bonfire. It's less powerful, but more consistent, and on enemy phase, if you plan on tanking multiple foes, you can just get hit, proc, which gives you an actual enemy phase, something that the other set would not. That said, do keep in mind the recoil is dangerous and therefore can actually screw you over. Another thing you can do is running Special Spiral with Brave Lucina, but that's a bit iffy. It's typically to run Aether, but as I said, that's pretty iffy because you don't have cooldown -1 on your weapon, which means that you basically won't proc it right away, unless you have something like Wrath to give you that other charge. It kicks you out of Wrath, but the thing that's nice about Aether is that because you're going to take 4 damage after the fight anyway, and because you'd be at under 75% HP, you'll basically take the hit, proc it back, get your HP back up to some extent. The recoil will, in a lot of cases, plus the fact that you got hit before, typically will get you low enough that the heal will get you higher to where you were before. But, even with that in mind, you're still going to typically have a net gain, because you are still a very bulky user at that point, because of the Raisins. 44 def and 45 res is no slouch. As I said, Devil Axe kind of fixes his speed to 49, and his attack is 77. 77 attack with a 32 damage bonfire, 42 if you have double Wrath. Yeah, you can kind of imagine where it leads. Aether is still an option, though like I said, it is a bit unwieldy. And that's kind of why he's the worst of the 4. He's a very strong unit. Honestly, the 42 damage bonfire can typically kill very, very frustrating enemies, including such units as Altena, despite having a disadvantage. And also keep in mind, this is without Dragon Flowers. Bars can get 10 Dragon Flowers. That 77 attack can go up to 79. Your bull can go to 46 def and 47 res. It's kind of nuts. But yeah, with that said, he's a really strong unit, and honestly, a very good 4-star plus 10 to make. That said, reposition is, you know, if it's a bit too tight, obviously don't do it. I personally did it, because I have a lot of bursts, and because he's actually a good unit. I'll most likely 5-star another one, so I can then merge it into my 4-star plus 10 for the Devil Axe, because, you know, that's kind of the main thing. That's kind of the main appeal. But yeah, overall, a really good unit and worth investing in. Next up is Jacob. Now, Jacob got one hell of a pack of steroids. You want to talk about 16 points of stat with Bards? How about 32? If he attacks someone, that someone loses 4 across the board, and he gains 4 across the board if someone is around him that's injured. That's basically the gist of the weapon. Now, you might wonder, why is he in S tier? Well, 2 reasons. Broadly fan kinda just, you know, steal the show with Matthew. And another problem that Matthew has is anything like rally traps. You are reliant on debuffs when you're using a weapon like Matthew's or Sizo's. That's not a problem with Jacob. Jacob is reliant on someone on your team having lost HP. Which should let me remind you, that's not a problem with, oh, let's talk about Barst. Or how about any Fury units? It is an extremely easy condition to fulfill. Hell, you can just use a Duma's Upheaval, for example, for the 4 across the board. Straight up. Then it becomes a benefit to you. And also, I do want to point out, this is within 3 space. It's not exactly hard to be within 3 space. So yeah. Quite an insane weapon. This is basically a colorless Fox Tome, but dagger. And also inflicts debuffs. So, yeah. I'm honestly shocked because in my head, the main thing you needed for Jacob was a way to get stat all across the board and stack them as much as you can. And then IS just basically decides to give him 8 across the board. I mean, that's perfect. The only issue is that Matthew will typically do better at killing on enemy face with debuff, though, like I said, if there is a rally trap, what tends to happen is that there's going to be a rally, then the unit gets danced, and because it got danced, or rather because it moved beforehand, the debuffs are gone, and with that, most of your damage. Same thing with Sizo. You can do the same thing, try to be a tank, and then suddenly the 6 across the board debuff is gone. Jacob just really just needs someone to be armed, and like within 3 space. That's it. That person that is harmed could also just be a support, like Barst, as I said earlier. Could just be, you know, have done a fight, and then has less than full HP, and therefore within 2 space, you basically get 5 across the board instead of 4. You can do that with Corrin, which I get is probably the idea. Male Corrin, that is. Male Corrin plus support plus this, you basically have upward to 10 across the board, even just on enemy phase, which is kinda gross. And then on player phase, you can have an extra 4 across the board on top of this. Look, Jacob just stacks stats like there is nobody's business. Another thing that you can also combo into Jacob would be Sugva Becker, which is Lift's weapon. Causes the nearest ally within 3 space to take 20 damage whenever he fights. Guess what is the condition for Jacob? So yeah. Just a lot of ways to really just make this work in general. This weapon is busted, but, you know, How about I show you a few examples? This is the main set, really. I want you to realize, with Mirror Impact and Sturdy Blow, without the weapon, you hit 43 HP, 63 attack, 41 speed, so the speed is a bit low, 43 def, and 44 res. Now, let's start with Jacob's Tray. On initiation, which is kind of the idea because Mirror Impact and Sturdy Blow, you will then, instead of 61 attack, or 63 attack, sorry, have 71 attack. We live in a world where Jacob can have 71 attack without Broadleaf Fan. What? Is 41 speed becomes 49 speed, which suddenly is actually a lot healthier, doesn't it? 71-49. How about the bulk now? Well, 51 def and 52 res. Huh? And then if you also hit attack smoke, that's 58 def, 59 res. On a unit with 71 attack and 49 speed. Jesus Christ. The only thing that's kind of sad is the fact that your attack is so low you can't really combo Legendary Eliwood into him. Because that would make some disgusting combo. Honestly, I've been looking for a dagger I wanted to plus 10 for a while, and Jacob might actually just be the one. Jacob is actually one of the better written characters of Fates as well, considering he actually has reason tag the way he does. He has really good reason to actually follow his master everywhere and just try his best to just do everything he can to help him or her. And in general, he's also a sarcastic asshole in the Japanese version, and I absolutely adore that. Also, his name is Joker in the Japanese version. I have no idea why his name has been localized to Jacob, but welcome to IS, where we name change stuff that doesn't need to be name changed. How about changing Harold's name to Arthur in Fates? Yeah, Arthur's actual name is Harold. I have no fucking clue why they did this. Anyway, this is overall a really good set already with stats alone, but let's talk with Special Spiral now. It's quite simple. 4 charge becomes 2, you hit, get hit, proc Glacies. And Glacies here will basically have 48 res for the cogs of damage, which effectively translates to 38 damage. That's a lot. 38 damage procs on top of 71 attack. It's kind of similar to Barst, isn't it? Except the difference with Barst is that he does not take damage every time he fights, but is also a lot more luck to player phase. That said, he's definitely usable on enemy phase. It's to a lesser extent, but it's definitely doable, as seen here. So this is the close counter set. It's, again, worse than the other set, but you still end up with 43 def and 42 res, which I kind of just realized I should be using Ignis instead. Damn it. This is to be used in tandem with Brave Lucina. Brave Lucina can also patch up your bulk to some extent. Effectively, just running Drive Def plus Drive Res, you'd be sitting effectively at 49 Def and 48 Res. So yeah, overall pretty bulky still, and you know, Glacies is going to proc for 39 damage. They'll take a hit and proc it instantly, and you still have 61 attack behind this. This is a more enemy face-centric build though, so keep that in mind. Actually, you have 64 attack because of Brave Lucina. My bad. But yeah. Very good unit overall. His stats have always been extremely balanced. And I always thought that this was just room for an insane refine. But I was always afraid that IS would not do it. I'm kind of glad that Jacob actually got a good treatment though. Because I've been... as I said earlier, I've been working, or not working, but I've been thinking of doing a dagger unit for a long time. Outside of Tedis, of course. Like an actual combat dagger. And I think this might just be it. This might just be the project. But time will tell on that one. Right now I have like 40k feathers due to my summons on the Leaf banner, which went disastrously, but I did get a bunch of merges. But my feathers took a beating. So, yeah. That's Jacob. The main reason why he's above Matthew and Sizo is just not having to deal with debuff, which is a lot more consistent, because there's no way to get actually screwed by this. And also the fact that he's good everywhere. Matthew and Sizo are going to be fairly good in AR, as long as you don't have to deal with rally traps. But outside of AR, they are very team-centric. Jacob is going to be good regardless of the team. That's kind of just what it is. It comes down to his kit rather than his teammates. Obviously, a teammate that can hurt himself in combat is very good to have. But there are so many units that fit that criteria, it's kind of ridiculous. And therefore, that makes him a one-size-fits-all and able to work with everything. Makes him overall a lot better. So yeah. With that said, let's move on to Morgan. Now Morgan is where, you know, the placement change come to fruition. So let's just talk about the base effect and let's compare this to, oh, I don't know, Deirdre and her Divine Naga. Divine Naga basically means that if you have 3 more res than the enemy, you get 3 across the board. What does this do? If you have 1, not 3, 1 more res than the enemy, you get 4 across the board, not 3. Okay, so the only thing that Divine Naga has is the fact that it has Dual All. Thank God it does have that, because that's a really strong niche. But Jesus, that's a really insane base effect. And I also want to point out another one. How about Camilla's base axe? What does it do again? Oh yeah, if you're within 2 space of a flying or cav unit, I believe, you get 4 attack and speed. And here is, if you have 1 more res when your base res is 33, might I add, well, you get 4 attack speed, but also def and res. I have a feeling that this is a bit much, don't you think? Okay, but the refine won't be that good, right? Grants attack speed plus 3 to allies within 2 space during combat. If unit is within 2 spaces of an ally, regardless of what it is. Grant attack speed plus 3 to unit during combat. This is more or less Camilla's weapon in a refine. Like the entire weapon as the refine. Except you lose 1 attack and speed. What? Except it's even better. Because the grant attack speed plus 3 to allies within 2 space, it doesn't specify what. Meaning it works on everything. Camilla's weapon, and this is why she went down a tier, only works on flyers and cav units. I get that this is for Zender and Leo, but cav units have literally 0 synergy with flyers. And therefore, it really is only used in flyer teams. But here comes a unit that can be used in any team and buffs itself in the process. What? So effectively, let's compare Camilla's weapon to this. Well, Morgan effectively gets 7 attack, 7 speed, 4 def, 4 res, while Camilla gets 4 attack and 4 speed. What a joke. Oh, and also, like I said, Morgan can be used to buff anything ever. I have a feeling that someone at IS really likes Morgan for some reason. I have no idea why that would be, but Jesus Christ, this weapon is insane. In general, I've always said that you should be refining support weapons, because those can be used in a variety of teams. Brave Lucina is one of them, Marv is one of them, Camilla is one of them. And I'm gonna be honest here, Morgan is kind of just a better Camilla at everything. And the weapon is just better for her because it fixes her actual garbage speed pretty well, especially at high merges to an obscene amount. And, you know, unlike Marv that can just kind of be a healer to some extent, Morgan can actually fight because of this refine. So yeah. Again, if you have a Morgan, get the weapon on her, refine it. The only time you shouldn't do that is if you use it is if you use Morgan as a Blade Tome for one of your AA team. This is oddly specific, but it's purely because I'm in that situation. So yeah. If you're in a situation like that, it's probably not worth it, but otherwise it's just such a good weapon. You're going to be using this everywhere. Or rather, you're going to be using this with so many combos in AA, it becomes a key resource unit to have in general. The only buffer that can be comparable at this point is Brave Lucina, because she does something unique. Honestly, I was debating on putting her at S+. That gives you an idea of how busted this is. She is, in my opinion, the closest S tier unit to also hit S+. Because Brave Lucina, yes, her weapon is great, as in like the buff is insane, but it only works on certain units, which the pool of unit it works on keeps it expanding, yes. But at the end of the day, it's only physical units, right? This works on any unit, including mages. It's attack and speed, which mages really like, and typically likes that more than def and res. It also like makes her a really good offensive unit. Like, let me just put it this way, okay? At unmerged, right? Unmerged. If you look at Morgan with this weapon, and every effects are up, you are looking at 37 HP, 41 attack, 37 speed. 41-37 is no slouch. And then you add on top of this 20 defense and 37 res. The def might seem bad until you realize that sturdy impact is a thing. And then you kind of just go, oh shit. This weapon is just nuts. I cannot believe they've done that. If they had done even all of this for Leaf, I would have been screaming of joy. I swear to God. This basically took a unit that had no direction whatsoever in what they wanted it to be, and made her something that actually is really good, with a very distinct role. You won't see me complain about that. That's exactly what a refine should do. Anyway, enough of me gushing about how insane the weapon is. Let's talk about the build. And yeah, this is why Marv and Camilla went from S to S-. So yeah, moving on. First build, I've already kind of spoiled it with sturdy impact. This is with aerobatics, but keep in mind, you can just use this in anything. If you want it to be in a full flyer team, so be it. Just run flyer formation instead. So, I'm using drive attack as the C skill, but really you can use whatever you want. Absolutely whatever you want. It does not matter what you use here. It really is just, you know, use whatever you need most. It's basically just what it is. So with this set, because of Father's tactic, putting that 40 speed to 47, I decided to go for Def Plus, which means that Sturdy Impact and Sturdy Blow together equals 40, 30, 43. With Father's tactic, that goes up to 47, 47. Yes, you are actually bulky with her. You can also use IoD Shield instead of Sturdy Blow, but I don't really recommend it. As for the attack, you are effectively looking at 75 attack. 75 attack with 47 speed. This is the third unit I'm reviewing so far, and they all have at least 70 attack in one of their sets. I don't know what to say. I'm not even using attack plus on any of these sets as far as I remember. It's kind of insane. On lower merges, you'll definitely want speed plus over def plus, however. Do keep that in mind. But yeah, it's very self-explanatory. What makes her so good is mostly the support utility, but again, she is also a very good unit. It's very reminiscent to Brunia in terms of stat line, like middling speed, good attack, good res, def could be better, okay HP. It's pretty much the same stat line, it's just that Brunia actually has the added benefit of just being completely immune to debuffs. So yeah, overall, pretty good unit. But it just begs the question, are we going to get re-refines? Because my god, Marv and Camilla are now completely outdated. Honestly, they could just do something very small, aka like making Marv's buff 3 across the board since he doesn't buff himself, and Camilla's buff making it 4 or 5, and the self buff also increased to like 5. Or just do 4 attack speed, def res, because she is a good mix tank. Like, something like this would go a long way for some of the older refines. Just like increasing the numbers of stats it gives someone. Deirdre could get 4 across the board instead of 3 across the board. Just to make up for the fact that Morgan basically has a better buff than she does, you know? But yeah, those are just my thoughts on the matter. As far as the second set is concerned, this is more so relevant for lower merges, where your res is a bit more iffy. It's very similar to how Deirdre is as a unit in general, where a res at lower merges is a bit iffy, but at higher merges is decent enough. Though even in her case, I still run Fury 4 on mine, despite being plus 10, purely because I need the speed anyway. So, you know. In this case, it's not exactly the case because you get 7 speed, not 3 speed from the weapon. But yeah. It's pretty self-explanatory. Fury to drop into Desperation, and then you just kill whatever you're dealing with Desperation. Kinda like how you use Blade Tomes. Except this is a Blade Tome that can... Well, not exactly a Blade Tome, but it might as well be at this point because of Heavy Blade. Do keep in mind, though, if you really are just banking on the Desperation instead of hit, get hit, proc, for like the more dangerous encounter when you're still at full HP, you can use Glacies instead, because then you'll just be able to charge it in one fight and then splurge it on the next fight. But yeah, moving on. Next up is Laszlo. Now, Camp Laszlo got an insane refine, and also a really good weapon. Though I will explain a few things about Laszlo's blade that a lot of people seem to misunderstand. he does not buff himself with it. The way this works is that whoever repoed him, whoever he repos, is basically going to be the place where anything within 2 space of that unit and the unit itself gets 4 across the board, except Laszlo. It does not work on him. So essentially, if you repo Laszlo forward, and you have from the place that you the unit ended up at before repoing Laszlo, from there is like within 2 space of there's the rest of your team. Your entire team gets 4 across the board, but not Laszlo. This is to basically make the refine work a bit better. The ways refine work is that you basically need 2 characters within 3 space. 3, not 2. Which is definitely worth mentioning because goddamn, that range makes this requirement a lot easier. But yeah, if unit is within 3 spaces of 2 or more allies with 10 or more buffs, you basically get 3 attack and death and a multi-phase brave weapon. Let me repeat this for you. A multi-phase brave weapon refine. This is a first. We have not gotten that yet, and this is basically a 19 might multi-phase brave weapon. The best way to really describe Laszlo is that right now he's basically a mini Altena, sorry, because you can use him in a very similar way, except that he has extra steps, but it's actually to his benefit. I'll explain that a bit later. So essentially, this is the idea is for you to just use someone to repo him or repo someone with him, and then just like get buff on everyone and therefore get the brave effect. While this is a commendable thing, I would definitely suggest you to just run someone with 2 tactics because it does the same job. Or even just run 2 tactics on him, but ideally you want to have at least an attack tactic buffing him, so it's better to be on a different unit. It's just more consistent, and sometimes you just won't be able to repo him or repo with him to get the effect going, which can be a bit of a problem and make the weapon a bit more gimmicky than it should be. So tactics is a good way to just fix that. Now, as far as weakness with Laszlo, there are a few. Lunge or any moves, any B skill that forces you to move from where you are when positioning is so important may actually screw you over and actually mean that you're going to be too far away from your partners to, well, have a brave weapon. So do be careful on this. What is the other one? Oh yeah, panic. Panic's the other problem, because you're going to have to be reliant on characters around you to have buffs. If you have to deal with, say, Trazir, who has, panic smoke, do understand that you have to be within 3 space. And this is why I said that the fact that if unit is within 3 spaces, this helps tremendously, because it means you can just be at the very edge of the within 3 space and avoid panic smoke. That said, the fact that you have so many units that you're reliant on having buffs on still means that you have to be wary of anyone getting panicked, because if even one of them gets panicked, you lose your brave effect. So yeah, it's kind of important. Another thing to note about his weapon is that he's better paired up with blade tomes. I don't think this should come as a surprise to any of you. Hopefully it doesn't. But essentially, just repoing with Laszlo a blade tome offers basically 20 attack to the blade tome user. And for across the board, with one unit. This is a lot of utility in one unit, and definitely worth mentioning, because on top of getting a good Blade Tome unit going, it also fulfills his own condition on his weapon. Again, really good weapon in general. Now, another thing I mentioned earlier was the fact that he was basically a mini Altena with extra steps, but it was actually giving him something. Now, Altena has 42 attack when you go attack plus, and then with the weapon, 52 attack. At plus 10, that's 56 attack. That attack is a bit low. However, if you're looking at Laszlo, you go attack plus, you go with the weapon, you're already at 54 attack, which is equal to a plus 5 Altena, or plus 4, as far as attack goes. And this is without Dragon Flowers, which Laszlo can get more than Altena. Why do I mention this? Well, let me just put it this way. Legendary Eliwood. It's also worth mentioning that Laszlo is actually very easy to merge, unlike Altena. So, getting to plus 10 is not difficult. Going attack plus, the weapon pushing you to 54, merges pushing you to 58, flowers to 60. I think you can see where I'm going with this. You can literally just get your 6 attack and def across the entire map to combo into Laszlo's Blade. Another thing to mention is that if everyone has the same attack on the party, what you can do with Legendary Eliwood is just have his C skill do the entire work for the weapon. Since he buffs across the entire map, it doesn't matter what your positioning is as far as the buffer is concerned. And, you know, you can even run something like Speed Opening on a different unit. If everyone has the same attack after all, everyone's going to get the buff, Laszlo and friends, and because the friends are going to get the buffs as well, guess what happens? That means Laszlo gets his multi-phase Brave weapon. It's definitely worth mentioning because Visions of Arcadia alone fulfills the condition, essentially, if you have multiple characters with the same attack. Like if I were to do a 5-man team with Mordecai, Nagi, Legendary Eliwood of course, and Legendary Lucina, and then I put Laszlo on there and I could get him to 58 attack, I could effectively just get everyone with 6 attack and, you know, 6 attack and def, essentially, across the entire map, make Laszlo very consistent, and also hit really hard. And even if you get chilled attack, it doesn't matter because everyone has the same attack anyway. And if it's not your team that gets hit, it's Eliwood, which doesn't matter. But yeah. And since it's reliant on outside help, or rather, outside unit getting buffs, that cannot be dulled. Meaning the Brave effect cannot be countered by a dull skill or anything that counters buffs. This is very helpful because it just, again, makes him more consistent. Now, enough of me talking about the weapon itself, let's talk about builds. Oh, also Mordecai, really good unit with him. Just do keep in mind that, you know, you typically might want to have Shove instead of Smite so you don't push Laszlo too far. But that really comes down to preference, really. So, first set is pretty simple. This is the, as I like to call it, the special Altena with a side special of special spiral sauce. That sounded way better in my head. Anyway, essentially this set, once you're in brazen range, effectively mean that you're sitting at 71 attack. Remember that the weapon gives you 3 attack and def if you actually fulfill the condition. Honestly, those stats could have literally not been there and the weapon would still be broken. It's just cherry on top, really. So, once you're in Raisin, you end up with 43 def and 42 res. That's pretty bulky. And oh, look at me! Another unit that hits over 70 attack. Jesus Christ, those seems to be common. This is what happens when you get an actual good pref. A pref that actually helps the user. Jesus. The speed is kind of, too slow. But that's fine. It's not really the idea here. So essentially, you typically just want to get hit. Then you basically hit back and proc. Or, if you have Brave Lucina, you'll just get hit and proc Ignis right away. That said, Lucina is not really required here. In fact, you don't really need any help. I will say two things though. First off, get hit back, proc Ignis, right? For cooldown. What you can do, and it's rare I actually mention this skill even exists. What you can do is to just run Infantry Rush. Your attack is high enough for it, and you can use Aether if you do. Because you'll get hit back once for 2 charge, and then proc Aether. This means you have self-sustain on top of this encounter. Now, it's not ideal for Brazens, and if you're doing this, I would say strongly use Mirror Stance or Attacker's Bond. Depends on the mode, really. Because these ones are going to be more consistent for you than just Brazen Attack Res, which relies on your HP being lower. But yeah, Aether is a really good one because, first off, you do a lot of damage. The problem is that it's on your second hit, meaning that the enemy already sustained quite a bit of damage. But it's still a good way to just top up your HP to some extent while staying at full, and also provide you extra damage. After all, 50% def loss is still 50% def loss. The only problem will typically be unit with special, I was going to say special spiral, special fighter, or any weapon with a guard-like effect. Or I guess Sword of the Creator, which is kind of just its own thing. But yeah, it's overall really good. With Ignis, you're basically killing whatever you're seeing, and this does not require any outside help. With Infantry Rush, you can run Aether, and Aether will just top up your HP constantly, which is really good. As far as the second set is concerned, wow, it's literally the Altena set! Whoa! Never imagined this ever! Yeah. Do keep in mind, if you want extra damage, Death Smoke is definitely a good alternative. With this set, you effectively hit 74 attack. This is obviously attack plus because Vantage. And you still hit 43-39, which is, still fairly bulky. This is why I keep saying, it's basically just Altena, but again, except cheaper. I'm honestly shocked that a unit like Laszlo even exists for free-to-play players. The main thing that's pricey about him is this encounter, and that's kind of it. You can just run this encounter, Attack Smoke is from a 3-star, Vantage is from a 3-star, Moonbow is from a 3-star, Laszlo's Blade is from himself, Repost from a 3-star, all of this is cheap. And yet, it's so effective. If you have not made a 4-star plus 10 Laszlo, now's the best time to do it. Because goddamn, this is insane. I do also want to point out that Winter Sophis absolutely gets destroyed by this. Completely bodied. Regardless of whatever the heck she does, there's no way she can one-shot Laszlo. Laszlo has too much health. And his res is not trash either. Meaning that dying, very, very, very difficult. And therefore, that makes him a lot more consistent. What can I say? It's just extremely effective. Moving on to build 3 now. So this is a bit more simple. This is more so a multi-phase set. Raf is there to effectively just give you the one charge. So if you're initiating, even if you don't have infantry rush, which by the way you can still run that. Oh, and in fact, oh boy, can you run that. You can also run, instead of Raf here, you can run Special Spiral and run Ignis with infantry rush. It's a bit iffy, but it basically means that even if you're initiating, you'll hit proc Ignis straight up. Which, I don't think I have to explain why that's good. Especially when you're looking at this from behind the perspective of someone with 71 attack and 43 defense. But you know, just thought I'd point that out. With Raf, you get an extra 10 damage when you're under 75% HP, which works well with Raisins. This is definitely a multi-phase set, however, because it's reliant on Raisin, and therefore you can't really use something like Aether with this one. Raisin attack speed will push your speed up to 47, and you'll effectively have 71-47, which means you can quad with this. And well, your bulk is still 43-32. The res is a bit iffy there because you don't have any buff in res. But other than this, very, very, very strong unit. I suppose this is the Fate privilege, really. Because goddamn, this is an insane batch of units. Honestly, this is probably the best batch of refines we've got in like all year. And I don't mean 2020, I mean 2020 and 2019 combined. We had a few refines here and there that were really good, like, you know, Brave Lucina, Brave Hike, but never like all 4 units being amazing. Like Bravelyn, she's good at high merges, otherwise she's kind of meh. All of these units work regardless of the merge level, really. Like, Morgan is definitely at her best at full merge, but she's still an insane support unit regardless. Laszlo is good regardless, and you can just make him a 4-star plus 10 if anything. And similar, and very, very similar thoughts when it comes down to Barst. Most of the fodder you need for these is also very accessible, which is, again, kind of shocking. Outside of Sturdy Impact and Mirror Impact, which, you know, Divine Codes. Outside of these two, and obviously Special Spiral, it's honestly very available. Honestly, I'm really shocked now that I think about it, because especially Laszlo with the Vantage set is basically free. It's free. The problem is obviously the extra steps, but that's something you can absolutely deal with. And that makes this batch insane, honestly. Well, with that said, everyone, I hope this gave you some kind of insight as far as these units are concerned. As usual, I won't really be able to respond to any comments. It's literally 8:40 AM. I have a class to teach in like 40 minutes. And then I have machining. I did not sleep tonight. This is going to be a rough day. Though, don't worry, I should be still awake enough. But yeah. With that said, I believe I've covered just about all I had to say. And with that, I'll be seeing you all later. Have a nice rest of the day, everyone. See ya.